Hey guys, I'm here with my good friend Steven Zapman Zapas, the ADC for Pittsburgh Knights, and world champion as well. Here to talk about Phase 2, Phase 1, and his career as a whole. And I think we should probably start with Phase 2, which I think has been fairly similar to Phase 1, where you guys have been sort of winning versus the bottom teams and maybe losing versus the top teams. And to be honest, this really doesn't even seem that different from the SK season last year. Are you guys still just sort of like in that mindset of let's get to the big dance and we'll make some noise?
What's going on, Pam? Thanks again for having me, by the way. And yeah, man, Phase 2 has pretty much been a mirror copy of last year's SK run. We have this problem with consistency. We have this problem playing against the top teams where like we may not be as aggressive, or we overcomplicate things, or we just do dumb stuff, or we forget stuff. And then against the bottom teams, we're so I don't know, carefree in a way. We just know we're gonna win because we have the game plan all fleshed out, and like nothing really goes wrong. But against the top teams, there's always like one little thing that goes wrong, and then, it snowballs for us there. And that's pretty much how it was when we were on SK. That's how it is right now. And honestly, it's probably how it's going to go for the rest of the season. Most likely. I don't know. We'll see.
Are you guys like comfortable with that? Because I'm sure losing is not great a feeling as a team, and like obviously winning makes you feel better. But like I think you guys as a team have maybe dealt with this sort of like roller coaster type season. Is this something that you guys are a little more comfortable with now, having like gone through it once, even in Phase 1 and last year?
Yeah, for sure. I think we have maybe a mental advantage when it comes to those kind of things, because we've had rough seasons and we've seen the results. We know our potential. We're the defending world champs. We went through I think 2 years in a row at Worlds. We went through placements, right? And then we made it to semis one year, and then we won it the next year. So we're very comfortable being where we are. It's never fun losing. Like some of us will get upset. I'll get upset. But at the end of the day, it's that heat of the moment, and then it's like over, you know. And then after that, we're like, okay, same shit, different day in terms of losing or why we lost. And then we're like, oh, we got to improve it in scrims, and then focus up in scrims, guys. And then game day comes around, same shit, different day. You know what I mean?
I know.
But yeah, we're comfortable with it, and we're gonna keep trying to work to get better. We do want to win during the regular season. We're not letting it affect us where it's something that hurts the team.
Right.
We obviously are like, okay, we got to work on X, Y, and Z, keep practicing and all that kind of stuff. And, if it clicks, it clicks. If it doesn't click, we know that we can turn it up for playoffs as well. So we're in a comfortable spot.
Do you think that this comfortability maybe helps, especially because there's a long phase, this split, where there's a potential for maybe things to go from like high peaks to like really deep valleys in the same phase? Do you think, having dealt with something like that is beneficial in a longer phase?
It is when in terms of keeping the team together, not hating each other, not resenting each other, being comfortable with each other throughout the whole year. That's one thing that our team has dealt with. I've teamed with a lot of these guys, except for QO, for many years. And we know each other. We know our quirks. We know like what pisses each other off. We know, if this guy's mad today, he's not going to be mad tomorrow, or like, nothing's personal. So like, it really helps us stay close together as a team. And like I said before, not be resentful, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're pretty much comfortable.
That's good. I mentioned the long phase because I've basically been asking every pro who comes on the show about, burnout and things like that. Those things that are associated with having basically an extra set of games in this phase. Is that something that you guys as a team have been dealing with? And if so, how have you guys been dealing with burnout?
Yeah, I think every team goes through burnout. The best way to combat that, I would say, is, monitor how much you scrim. The scrim has to be productive. Something our team believes in is quality over the quantity. Like, it's cool if you scrim 10 hours a day, but if 9 out of those 10 hours, you guys are just going through the motions, you're not really learning anything. What's the point? You might as well have not scrim. So what we try to do is we do double blocks when we feel like we need it. And the most important thing that we look out for, our coach looks out for, is that we're all in it mentally. And so we get a solid 3 hours of learning and, figuring out new stuff. And if we're doing really bad or we have big games coming up, we'll do double blocks and things like that. But the most important thing to us is everyone being there mentally and giving it their all, so we're actually using the time productively.
Sure. I especially remember like Bara's answer to this, and he said that burnout is kind of a big concern for him, especially because he's a streamer also. And I know that you're a really big streamer as well. Yeah. Basically stream every day. So is that something that you're thinking about, maybe taking some streams off and things like that, just to not get bored of Smite, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a great thing you bring up. And that's something I dealt with early on in my career. I never really streamed consistently, you know, month after month, week after week. I always streamed for like a month straight. Then I'm like, oh my God, I just hate Smite. You know, I'm scrimming all the time, blah, blah, blah. I'm done with streaming for like a month, you know, and that really hurt my growth as a streamer or a content creator because I kept taking months off or like 2 months at a time, and you kind of just lose all the momentum you had, you know? And it wasn't really only until this year that I started being consistent, you know, month after month after month. And I think I've been able to, I guess it's called compartmentalize. You know, like I have my streaming here, my scrims here, you know, my family time here, and I kind of don't let them interact with each other, interfere with each other, even though there is overlap. Sometimes on my stream, I'm having a rough day or I had a bad day at scrims. And you know, it's obvious, like I'm in a bad mood or anything like that. But I don't know. I think over the years, I dealt with that kind of burnout, and I've matured in a way where I can, you know, for the most part, compartmentalize or separate, you know, the different jobs, because streaming and playing Smite professionally, they're two different things. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I tried my best to separate them. I tried my best to have a certain perspective on things and, you know, treat each accordingly with the right attitude.
Sure. Well, and I got to imagine that winning Worlds probably makes that mentality a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I have this attitude now. You know what I mean? Like before Worlds, I was, you know, on and off in streaming, and after Worlds, you know, every day, like no problem.
No problem, yeah.
I got to say, like it was such a monkey on my back, or I don't know what the saying is. Like,
I think that's the saying.
Yeah. And I played Smite for so long, you know, I went through so much shit as like a young adult, you know, trying to get to Smite, and I really wanted to win Worlds, and I always thought I was good enough to win Worlds, and I was always just coming up short, or you know, one reason or another not making it, and it was always it always casted a shadow on me. Even like during my streams or even in life in general, it was just always like something that was just, you know, what if I never win? Right? I'm getting older. Like this was my dream, and what if I never win? And then to finally win with, you know, that current team where it was kind of a bunch of no names in a sense, where it's like Neil was on the 0-30 like ALG team, right? Paul came out of the minor league, right? Sam came out of the minor league. Ronnie never really got a lot of respect.
Yeah, I agree.
And he still doesn't get a lot of respect either, in my opinion. He's a really good player. And me, I've always come up short, you know, and then just to win it the way we won it with that group of guys was really something special. You know, we made it through placements. We beat the 3 favorite teams going in, and it was just, you know, it was an incredible story, and that I couldn't have asked for a better win. Yeah. And that really kind of just lifted the shadow off of me, you know, lifted all the doubt or, you know, quarter life crisis kind of stuff that was going on in my head. Yeah. And now I kind of feel free, and it let me change my perspective on a lot of things, and it's helped me, you know, stream consistently all the time, scrim and do all that kind of stuff while still, you know, maintaining a level of sanity. Yeah. That's good.
I think most people will call that validation.
Yeah, you know? For sure.
I think we sort of got off topic a little bit about Worlds, but let's move back to Phase 2 a little bit. I was talking to Bobby last week, and I was asking him a lot about the Ymir pick in duo lane, and he says that Ymir is basically there for pressure. Is that something that you guys are prioritizing in duo lane, like getting pressure picks in order to maybe like snowball the lane? I know there's a strat that you guys did this weekend in the SPL where Neil like blinked to their alpha to try and steal it, and then you like solo the wave to hit 2. Is that all in terms of like getting more pressure in the lane?
Yeah, right now the duo lane meta is pressure. And some teams in scrims maybe run Ymir more than others. And it's just kind of like usually, like I would say 8 times out of 10 Ymir is pretty bad. But you don't want to risk it sometimes, or maybe you're not afraid of other picks from certain teams. So, you know, you end up banning Ymir or just so you don't have to deal with it. But yeah, that's pretty much kind of the dual lane meta is pressure. Ymir gets pressure, but he's not really good later on. And as far as the whole strat of blinking into the Alpha Harpy, that's kind of just a Rama exclusive.
Oh, okay.
Because Rama, or Izanami, but no one plays Izanami. Right. So basically what happens is the Rama is able to push the whole wave quickly. Yeah. It gets level 2, and then if the support delays them enough at the Alpha Harpy, you can kind of like box them in and make them lose a lot of the minions in the wave. So pretty much dual lane is all about pressure. That's why Rama's a top pick. That's why you see a lot of these Kuzembos and stuff like that. They can fight in the lane. They can get pressure just by standing there because you have to be afraid of the pluck. Same thing with Soba. You got to be afraid of the pluck. And they translate really well later on into the game as well.
Sure. Is that something that you also see happening with the mage ADCs? Are they there in the duo to bring pressure as well? I mean, I think the mage ADCs have maybe fallen off a little bit except for Freya. But, we still see teams pick things like that. I think Oleron is still pretty highly picked as well. Is that why mage ADCs have been doing so well? Because, I mean, Hecate has been nerfed a couple times recently. So
yeah. Mage ADC is just, they just kind of beat hunters in a sense where they have more sustain if they go double lifesteal so that a hunter can never outtrade them. And they have just kind of good base stats. All they really need are levels. For example, Freya, her main way to scale her damage is attack speed because her 2-1 already have good base stats. They don't really scale that high with magic power. So the best way to scale them is attack speed. And then that goes into the ring builds, and now that she doesn't have to go Bancrofts per se, she could go Hecate. It's like such a double whammy of power spike, you know what I mean? Because the attack speed really scales her damage because she gets more 2-1s off. And that's why she gets picked in the dual lane. Even though she's not a strong laner early, no one can touch her as soon as she gets her first ring, like Hecate or Hasten.
Right.
So you see the Freya pick a lot against Rama. It's because Rama can't lane against the Freya, right? What happens is the Rama has a short dash. So Freya just whoops, goes into melee range, and no matter where the Rama goes, the Freya can still hit the auto. And you see the Freyas go Hasten ring first, so they can follow the Rama. They'll always outtrade them. And that's why you've been seeing the Freya into Ramas. And as far as Oleron, he has, insane kind of utility with his ult and his 3, which gives prots and gives heals. So they're just overall stronger than an ADC in terms of like their scaling and their kind of in lane fight.
Sure.
And that's pretty much why they get picked.
Well, and especially with Oleron, I imagine the team fight is probably a little bit more impactful than traditional ADCs, so to speak.
Yeah. Oleron was getting picked before Hecate was even buffed, right? Like last year, he was getting picked a little bit. It's because his utility was so amazing. One of the best team fight ults in the game.
Yeah. So now that we're talking about Phase 2, and we're sort of basically in the middle of it right now, I would say, what were maybe some of your favorite changes that happened in this mid-season patch? Because I know a lot of people, at least when the first mid-season patch came out, people were really happy. There were a lot of changes. It was going to be something fresh. So right now that we've sort of let things settle, what are some of your favorite things that have changed, either in the map or items or gods or whatever?
I would say at first I was skeptical of the pen change, but it actually has opened up a lot more builds, a lot more build paths that are actually fun. One thing that I find fun as an ADC is, attack speed, having, fast attack speed and everything like that. And the chin size build and then going into all the pen items that have attack speed is actually a really fun build path because you feel powerful. And as soon as you get your third item, every item after that just, is a great power spike and you feel strong and you're autoing really fast. And it's just like a fun play style to play. So I really do like the item changes. I like that a lot of the attack speed items are getting picked up more. As I said, it's a more fun play style. You can go crit. I do wish there was a little bit more pen options for crit. Right now, only 2 items have crit, and one is kind of a gimmicky one with the Wind Demon. You have to crit first before you get the pen. So I don't like that too much. But yeah, no, the hunters I think are in a really good spot right now. One of the major reasons why is because they nerfed Nemean, or they changed Nemean. So there's no like kind of cheap way to you could just stand there and outbox a hunter as a warrior. And, they did nerf Thorns a little bit, which I was happy about. And also they took away all the flat pen off hybrid, which was the biggest, I think, annoyance for ADCs. When it was the Blackthorn Void Shield meta, I think it was season 5 or early season 6, it was impossible to deal with that because they had 1 million health, ton of power, infinite mana with Blackthorn, and then they had that 20 flat pen from Void Shield, which was just insane. You know what I mean? A third item, and it was also, but that build was cheap, so that was really unfun to play against. But now, I think a lot of things are a lot more balanced. And even if a warrior can beat you up with sledge, it doesn't feel oppressive. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like I can't deal with it. There's no counterplay, because he doesn't do a million damage. He might still outtrade you at that certain power spike, but it doesn't feel like it's overwhelming. So I really like where the balance is right now compared to, or in relative to ADCs versus tanks. I still don't like reflect damage, which is like, common knowledge. But overall, I like where the game's at in general.
Sure. Now that you mentioned warriors, I remember when I was talking with our analysts and even with Bobby and Nika, we've seen basically warriors in the solo lane, or even just solo laners in general, be a little more carry focused this season. Is that partly because of these item changes, you think? And is that something that is affecting maybe your playstyle in the duo lane as well?
Yeah, it's mostly because of the items. Their best items are hybrid items. Like, they have to get Sledge because Sledge is insane, right? So Sledge synergizes with more HP, and they get Gaia as well. So their playstyle kind of differs, where they don't build as many prots. They build kind of HP and power, and they try to do and also the picks, right? Like Wukongs and Amas and Cthulhu's, right? Those gods are very hard to kill on their own, right? Even without prots, they're mobile. Wukong has a get out of jail free card. Cthulhu's ult gives a mitigation and, a million HP. So that's why the meta has shifted for them, where, prots don't really do anything for them right now. So what they did is they pick these shifty gods that are kind of hard to kill because of their mobility or whatever other reason, their utility. They do a bunch of damage and then they get out. You know what I mean? That's kind of the play style.
Sure.
As far as ADCs, that it did change the meta, where now the chin size build is more popular because
they're building health now.
Exactly. When they get that third item Gaia or that third item Sledge, that third item Rage that you would get doesn't do anything, right? You don't get that much value from it. So third item chin size, boom, you see the immediate effect and the immediate power spike you get against that kind of meta build that the Warriors are going.
Sure.
So that's kind of the whole dynamic there.
Okay. What are maybe some underrated things that you think people are sleeping on right now in Phase 2? I mean, and you don't have to give anything away, but is there something that's you think people are maybe neglecting?
Sure. I think one of the most important things that the viewers don't notice is farming. Farming is so important in Smite. And a lot of times you see a game where, one team has 6 kills, the other team has 1 kill, but the team with 1 kill has more farm overall. And that is something that is very important. Smite has a kind of a fine balance of, over rotating for kills or something like that, and another team farming efficiently. There's a balance there where you can't go so hard on one, without falling behind on the other. So that's something I think the viewers should pay a little bit more attention to, who's getting the most neutral camps, who's kind of over rotating and splitting it efficiently, and those kind of numbers add up. Who's getting the shrine, efficient, those kind of things, they really add up when you see that 1K gold lead and you're like, how the hell did they get that 1K gold lead? Try to pay attention a little bit to the neutral objectives and who's rotating to what and how people are splitting. That's actually, it's a really an interesting thing to look at when you understand it.
Sure. I feel like I see that a lot with Space Station Gaming, where they give up kills early a lot, and then it's 10 minutes in and they're up 3K gold, and you're like, wait, what? It's
they never waste time. If someone's going to their blue and they can't win the fight, they're already stealing your back harpies or something like that. Sure. So they know how to. That's why they always pick those kind of late games, because they trust their farm, they trust their process.
So now that we're halfway through Phase 2, what are maybe some things that you guys as a team are looking to improve on as we go into the second half of the phase? Is it just communication things, or are there other things that you guys have found that need some work?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is kind of making a plan and then being able to adapt to the in-game situations. The other game against Ghost, we kept, I guess trying to defend something that wasn't really there. We didn't really make adjustments where we played, the other side of the map or anything like that. So I think that's something that we struggle with against top teams, where we may make a early game plan, and then when it doesn't go well, we fail to adapt, and that's why it kind of just looks like it snowballs on us. You know what I mean? And that's definitely something we need to work on. Being comfortable with changing the plan, being comfortable with or trusting that if we do if we deviate from the plan, that it's still going to be good and we're not going to fall behind and things like that. That's something we need to definitely work on as the season progresses.
Sure. You talked a little bit about adapting in the course of a game. What about in terms of like sets? Because I feel like sometimes your team has a propensity to maybe run it back a little bit. Mm-hmm. Is there any thought to maybe like changing things up? I mean, maybe not all that much, because I don't think you guys play like have ever really run it back. But is that something that you guys try to do as well? Adapt between games in a set?
Definitely. I think we go into each game with a plan, and we like our plan. And sometimes when things go wrong, we identify the issues as, we should have defended that purple, or we should have, deviated this and that. It wasn't the picks. It was more the way we played it, right? And then so you see an adjustment here. Okay, let's take away that pick because it gave us a problem, and we'll change one of ours. But for the most part, we work on that plan all week. So we want to stick to that kind of general, what is it called? General like idea of what we want to do. That's why it might seem like a run back, but there are changes that are being made. Whether we lose again or not, that's a different story. Right. And that's kind of why it looks that way, and why we do what we do. So
now that we've seen maybe some of these bottom teams, and I think even you guys everyone has improved the quality of their play. As we've sort of gone through phase 2. What are your expectations for the league as a whole as we get into maybe like the last third of this phase? Do you feel like there's going to be a lot of lower teams maybe taking games and sets off of these teams that are maybe higher in the rankings? Like, I know we saw Ghost lose this week to Renegades, which I don't think anyone really predicted, especially after the Solar Troll benching. Is that sort of like a sign of what's to come?
Well, I think as every year in the past, as the season comes to a close, teams are becoming better. Everything's becoming more second nature. The meta gets more stable. So you'll see teams get closer. Also, like we discussed earlier, burnout happens. Top teams that were in the top, it's very hard to not be complacent, especially in scrims if you're winning all the time. So you start seeing those teams kind of fall off a little bit. The lower teams are still hungry. They kind of, close the gap. And as the season goes on, I expect more quote unquote upsets like that to happen. But that's just kind of like the natural flow of the season. You know what I mean?
I don't even like to call them upsets, because I think even right now, like the parity in the league is at an all-time high, where it's just like every game it feels like is almost on a knife's edge and could tilt either way.
For sure. Yeah. No, for sure. I think the top teams are top because they have a lot of experience in their play, and if you notice, they all have the same play style as they did last year. You know what I mean? Ghost, they rival, they running down. Space Station, they play the exact same way like last year. They play that late game style. They farm, and Radiance is a brand new team. They have their own style, but they got a bunch of great players, right? Us, we're doing the same crap as last year, where we like int against good teams, play bad teams, but we know how to win. We know how to do this. We get in our own heads, or we do something dumb, and it's literally a mirror image of last year. The top teams this year are the same as last year. The bottom teams are the same as last year, right? And it's just because that style of that team, it kind of doesn't change. And if you actually notice, Space Station in the beginning of phase 1, they were trying a lot of different stuff, and that's why they were getting smacked down. And all of a sudden they started whipping out the Kali. They started whipping out the Hera, right? And they're back to form. They play that. They went back to their old style that they're comfortable with because the team is so in tune with that.
Right.
And that's why I think, the seasons look so similar. I would say the only wild card is Sanguine, because they're a brand new team that came in, right? And, they're playing well. They're playing hungry because they're a brand new team. They got a lot to prove being from LATAM. Yeah. So I would say a lot of this season for me personally is not a surprise. I expected those, other than Sanguine, I expected, those top 3 besides Sanguine to be there. And I expected us to be middle of the pack, basically. I was hoping we would be a little bit more consistent and beat better teams, but I kind of see the same stuff happening that happened last year.
Sure.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it on that.
Okay. I know Neil has talked a little bit in some of the PK videos that your org has done about kind of missing being in the studio. Is that something you feel as well? And do you guys ever give any thought to maybe like having a desk for you at the house and like going and playing with them, or with COVID, was that just not a thing that was going to happen?
Yeah, no, that's just not a thing that'll happen. In terms of missing playing on the studio, I think that kind of goes for every team.
Yeah.
You know, we might use that as an excuse, but it's not really a reason why we lose.
Sure.
But yeah, I would say like pretty much every team probably misses playing at the studio. That's the whole point we moved down to Georgia for.
Right.
So, but obviously no one could have anticipated COVID and the impact it had.
Yeah.
You know, on everything. So yeah, but I probably won't go to the house or anything. It's the same thing as being here, and I think everyone misses playing at the studio for the most part.
Since you brought up Sanguine, maybe give us what your expectations were coming into Phase 1, you know, them being basically a brand new team. I know Aurora said that Radiance was scrimming them a lot before the season started, and they thought that they would be pretty good in the league. What do you guys think about them at the start of Phase 1?
Yeah, I was always a fan of Sanguine. I've always supported them. Even before they got into the SPL, I always talked them up. And when they did get into the SPL, I always had their back, especially on the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And when a lot of people would be like, whoa, my God, Sanguine got in, blah, blah, blah. And I would always defend them because we also scribbed them. We also played against them at placements, and we knew they were a good team.
Yeah.
And we know a lot of the players from ranked as well. They're very good players, hungry. And I think they pretty much have quieted down all the haters and all the doubters with their play.
Yeah.
Been incredible. And I expect them to do really well at LAN too, especially since all 5 of them are here. I mean, I can't imagine what they would have done last year at Worlds if they had your core there. It could have been a whole different thing. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But I'm excited. Yeah.
All right, so now we're sort of started talking about Phase 1. I think it's probably good that we just keep going on with this. How was it like integrating Cuvo into basically this whole squad of like NA bros who's, I mean, you guys have been playing together for like, I think almost, this is your 3rd year together. So, you know, integrating like just one person in must have been a little bit weird and awkward at the beginning. How did that go for you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit weird at the beginning because, you know, he wants to see how our team does things. You know, he doesn't want to step on anyone's toes. Right. And then in the beginning, he wasn't as comfortable as he is now. And as he got to know everyone, you know, he's super comfortable. He's just one of the guys. Yeah. And we have Neil Ma. Neil Ma is like such a good person to like socialize with, and kind of like everyone loves Neil. You know, he's always very Canadian. I don't know. He's just very nice. You know what I mean? He's so easy to talk to. He doesn't get upset. So he's pretty much kind of the glue for our team. And so, you know, having him there, and then Cuvo is interacting with Neil, especially because they're support and jungle. It just made it so easy. And I've known Cuvo for a long time, like 8, 9.
I remember you arm wrestling his dad at Worlds last year. So
yeah, I wrestled his dad. Yeah, I mean, I know his dad. You know, I'm good friends with Trix, and Trix's brother and Cuvo. I've known those guys for so long, since they were like 15. You know, and now they're 23. Yeah. So you know, I've known them for a long time, and I love Cuvo. He's a very good player, very natural player, and you know, he surprised me with how much he actually thinks about the game too. He thinks about it in a very like analytical way, very like, you know, min-maxing kind of way, and I thought that was really awesome, and love having him on the team. And I think you know, we'll do great things coming through LAN, but like I said before, we're kind of doing the same dumb stuff that we always do, like we did last year in the games against top teams. So you know, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Now that like Phase 1 is over and we've had like this really big patch, are there anything that you guys might have left on the table in Phase 1? Are there like some strats or something that aren't applicable anymore in Phase 2 because of the mid-season patch that you didn't have a chance to like show off?
No, I wouldn't say so. We definitely were upset with how we lost to Radiance. We beat them in the first game, like very handily. And then we kind of fell apart in the last 3 games because we did some kind of dumb mistakes, where like uncharacteristic mistakes where we're like dive to tier 1. You know, that was it's like a greedy play, or we're fighting for no reason and things like that. So we kind of felt like we left. We were pretty good at the end of Phase 1 too, and we kind of felt like we could have done that tournament. It definitely was a letdown for us. You know, and in terms of strategies, you know, it kind of like, there's a certain way to play Smite, or maybe the way your team plays Smite, and then that's like the strategy. And then you know, you get picks to go long to help you perform the way you want to perform. So I would say there's not really anything we didn't like get to try or anything like that.
Sure. So your answer there reminded me of this question I had before, which was you were talking about how certain teams basically have certain play styles, and is that just come from like what the players prefer? Because like I don't know, in a lot of games there are things I want to say they get solved, but like it used to feel like there was a meta and everyone was basically a slave to that meta, and now it feels a little bit different where like you can focus on certain things as a team to gain strategic advantages. Is that how you feel Smite has evolved for you guys, especially in like the competitive level?
Yeah, that's a great point that you make. I would say in seasons past, there's big imbalances that kind of just dictated the meta.
Okay.
For example, season 4, Thorns and Kukulkan were extremely broken. Yep. Benji literally won Worlds by himself with that pick and that kind of combination. Sure. Season 5 was very like just pressure and there's only 2 hunter picks in season 5. It was just Uller and AMC, in the long lane, and then everyone was just fighting in the, so there was just like these imbalances, especially on the map too, where like season 3, I think there was the little fire elemental. Yep. So there was more farm in the solo side than there was in the duo side. So everyone forgot about the duo side. It was 1v1 in duo lane, and everyone just fought in the solo side, and that's why there was the invade meta, the hogs, and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think every year there is this kind of imbalance that dictated the meta for all teams. If you didn't do this, if you didn't play solo side season 3, you lost. If you didn't play pressure solo lane in season 4, you lost, right? In season 5, if you didn't do the 3-man invade on purple, you had a disadvantage. And in season 6, if you didn't invade speed, right, with the support, you had a disadvantage, right? So there's these kind of imbalances that dictated the meta. And I think in season 5, they really tried to calm the early game down, less invades. They made Hog a consumable that only affected your creeps. That's one. Right. So that means if you got invaded, you could secure your own buff over the enemy. They had no advantage in terms of secure, like there was in season 6, right? 50-50. And then they also added Invader's Curse. So, and they also made you kind of have to dual lane because of the Spirit Minion and the purple buff. And obviously you can invade. So where's the support going to go in the dual lane? So I think in season 7, it's allowed teams to really play their own style because the early game is kind of quaint. You know what I mean? It's like very like, okay, relax. And then you got 3 minutes in and now you can, play the way you want to play. Doesn't mean there's still not aggression or anything like that, but it just, because it's less snowballing in the first 2 minutes of the game, like it hasn't been in every other season for the most part. People can play more their style and kind of do different things, and you see a whole crap ton of picks being picked, everything like that. And that actually makes Smite a lot of fun right now. And I think the builds are, for the most part, pretty balanced all across the board. Sure. So I think Smite is probably at its most balanced state in the 8 years that it's been out. So it's been a lot of fun. I think the play styles for teams is more distinct because of that, and a lot more kind of fun strategies and fun picks.
Great. Last question here about phase 1. What are maybe the things that you guys feel like you improved the most on after phase 1?
Oh, I kind of think we went down after phase 1 a little bit.
What did you, not like after phase 1, but like, what did you improve on throughout phase 1? Like, what is something that like, that changed, from the start of phase 1 to maybe now? Like, what are something that you feel like the team has improved the most on, even up to now?
I would just say maybe Cubo getting more comfortable with us and our communication being a little bit better. Overall, though, I think we're kind of similar in phase 1, and nothing much after that, to be honest.
Okay. All right. So next session here is we're going to talk a little bit about maybe your career. I mean, you're basically one of the longest standing SPL players, so it'd be a shame not to ask about things that have happened in your past. So I'll start out with this. A lot of supports that you've played with have gone on to win world championships, and I even think you had a propensity for maybe bringing up not amateurs, but like maybe unknowns in competitive. Do you see yourself as a mentor to some of these newer players that you bring into the league and things like that? And is that something that you look for when you're like constructing teams and things like that?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. Is my early days, Curse and Root, I was very hands-on. I was very micromanaging type of person. Like I would pretty much tell everyone what to do. Like, okay, 2 minutes or like 30 seconds of buffs coming up. You X and XY rotate here and all that kind of stuff. I was very like hands-on like that, and it was actually a detriment to my team where like to micromanage everything because no one really understood it for themselves in a sense. So like they would get so used to me telling them what to do that when I didn't feel like doing it one day in scrims, we just get destroyed because they didn't really learn it themselves.
Sure.
So that was something that kind of filled me with a lot of game knowledge. And then I remember when I think when Aurora left, we picked up Polar Bear Mike, and we had an option to pick up Ionic or like some other experienced player. But I remember telling Lassus, I was like, listen, I just want someone that's just going to listen to me. You know what I mean? Not have any opinions on their own. And then Mike was a backup to Brochacho at the time at High Five.
Yeah.
And I remember, I'll never forget this, but there was this game in ranked where he played Ymir and he had like a really sick wall. And I was like, this guy's pretty sick. I just had that in the back of my head. And like months later, had the opportunity to pick him up. And I was like, let's get Mike. He's a sub for a team. Obviously, he's hungry. And I think, he'll just listen to everything I say. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I picked up Mike. And then, I worked a lot with Mike. And then, that year ended up unsuccessful in season 2. We lost to Fnatic, trying to make it to Worlds, right? And then roster changes. And then with Aurora, Aurora was more like, he was less impressionable as Mike was back then because he was more of an established player. And, we worked a lot together, and he kind of basically knew everything. And, but yeah, that was kind of my thing with supports, is like, I really liked people that would just listen and then I could work with, you know what I mean? Didn't really have an ego or anything like that. And those guys, they didn't have egos. Aurora was such a pleasure to work with because he was always open to, criticism and opinions, but he also was confident enough to know when, he was right or like, and things like that. So I definitely love both of them. And Neil's kind of the same way, where like Neil's confident, but he was also, coming from that 0-30 ALG team, you know what I mean? So he's very open. He was very open to criticism, and they complimented me well. I wasn't always the nicest guy back in the day, especially to my supports. But yeah, now I'm matured and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I don't even know where this question is going to. I just kept talking about my supports, but I love them all, and they all like, have unique personalities, and they're all awesome guys.
Are there like players other than supports that you feel like maybe you've helped shape or mold or like mentor in other ways?
Yeah, I would say like the jungle role, especially. I worked closely with Sam a lot. If you talk to our team back in the day, and like, who I always would get into it with, it was always with Sam. I'm like, Sam, what are you doing? Sam, you should be over here. Sam, do this and that. It was a lot of fun. And Sam, he was always a good sport about it, even though I know he secretly was like this mother effer, you know what I mean? And, but he was always a good sport about it. And we improved as a team, and, and Sam's just a beast player and an awesome guy.
Well, now that you mentioned Sam, I don't know if you've seen the extended cut of my interview with him, but I asked him about mentors that he's had, and he actually gave a lot of credit to you for like showing him the ropes and things like that. So, it's good to see that.
Oh, he did? Yeah. Oh, that's nice of him.
He was like, man, Zap really like, he basically helped me out a lot early on, especially I think because you guys were on Trifecta that year before. I think that's basically when you were teaching him the ropes and things like that. So
the thing about Sam is he was always an amazing player. What I kind of bring to like these guys is the finer details. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm getting ganked. Immediately look for the left side heart. Like, I'm getting yanked and right. Immediately look for the left side harpies. Look for their left side backs. Why are you rotating to the right side? You're already late. Like, like all these little details, the fine tuning. These guys already are like insanely good, insanely whatever. But something I brought to the table would be just that experience that I have playing for so long. You know what I mean? And always thinking about the game. It's just those finer details that really just kind of makes them the insane players they are today.
Sure.
Do
you find that when rookies come in, they're all like very mechanically skilled, but they focus more on maybe like the micro things, like the 1v1s or like the specific parts of team fights, and are maybe less aware of sort of the macro map play that goes on.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like, I play ranked a lot, and I think there's a lot of players that are mechanically good enough to be in the SPL, but they just don't have the right frame of mind to play at the top level, right? They won't make the correct decisions in terms of like not going for a gank, instead going for the farm, or grouping up with your team instead of selfishly doing something else. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. And I think this is something that Sanguine benefited from, was scrimming Radiance a lot, scrimming us a lot, getting that kind of, it changed their mentality from like an amateur team to a pro team, you know, doing those little things. And I think there's a lot of players that would benefit from veteran leadership. Like, for example, Awesome Jake and Barracuda is a great example. I'm sure Barra has had a great influence on him, whereas Jake was, you could see in the beginning of the year how wild he was and kind of like dumb stuff all the time. And then you can see how he's kind of honed in now. You see him making plays with Lasbury. You see him making nice rotations, coming back to purple to help out Barra when he's at a disadvantage, or invading when he's at an advantage, right? You see those. That's what I was saying earlier, chat. Like, look at the farmer. Just like look at those finer things. Those are the things that take a team to the next level, or take a player to the next level. And I think there's a lot of players that could be in the SPL if they just had that kind of guidance. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's what, yeah. And I think when like a lot of players retire, like let's say me and Barra retire or something like that, and if we became coaches, that is something that we would bring to the table to those kind of teams, right? Right now, there really hasn't been anyone that's retired that's been on that top and is now a coach. You know what I mean? There's not really anyone like that. There's kind of just like people that love the game. They're like, okay, I want to coach, and they do, you know, all the stuff that they do and whatever they bring to the team. But there isn't someone that's like played the game for 8 years and all of a sudden becomes a coach and can really take a fresh player that's mechanically amazing and give them the finer things to like bring their game to the next level.
Sure. It's interesting that you say that. Like, I tend to agree that there aren't really a lot of what would you call like developmental coaches, so to speak. Because I feel like a lot of times, and this is not to knock any coaches, but coaches are like really focused on like picks and bans and like making sure that the comp is good for like team fights and things like that. And I think it probably takes a lot more effort to like sit down with one or two players and be like, yo, this has to happen at this time, you know, this has to happen at this time, you know. I think maybe that effort isn't it's not that it's like not there, but it's hard to do, especially like you said, because, you know, not many coaches even have the experience that you or Barrow would have.
Yeah, exactly.
What about some favorite rookies? Like, you've had the pleasure, I guess, of playing with a lot of rookies over your career. And we basically have talked about quite a few of them already, but who are maybe your favorite rookies to play with? Or even play against, for that matter.
Yeah, I remember the first time I played against Panda Cat, it was funny. We got demoted to the minor league in season 2, early season 2. I was pissed, you know, and then we played against Legion of Carrots. That was Per and Kiss's team. And then I played against Panda Cat, and then I was like, this little shit had the audacity to be aggressive on me in lane. You know what I mean? I'm like, why is he playing aggressive on me in lane? It's just so disrespectful. You know what I mean? Like, I had the ego of like huge back then. You know what I mean?
The ego of a 22-year-old, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I always remember this. And he was like playing keyboard. I was like, and he would just play up on me. I'm like, why the hell is he playing up on me? You know? Then he'd solo me, I'd solo him, and then we always went back and forth. So I always, you know, I love that. I always remembered that. And, you know, nowadays me and Panicat have a rivalry. You know, we love each other kind of, but also secretly hate each other at the same time. You know what I mean? We never like say it out loud, but like it's there. You can just tell, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like, he kind of has the same kind of, like, I would say like mentality as I do, where you just want to like shit on the other guy. Like, I don't even want them to step up to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think for me nowadays, less so, because I'm a little bit more, you know, relaxed in that sense, but I could still see it from him. And, you know, that was definitely one of my favorite, like, I guess he was a rookie back then, you know, so that was one of my favorite rookies to play against. I also remember playing against Barra when he was a rookie. I think we were in China at the time, right? And there was this like random team called Vicious and Delicious that was like taking over the scene. And I'm like, these like, you know, like, who do they think it is? Because we're not in the thing, right? And I remember he picked Artemis, and I was like, mistake. I picked on her and kind of just like, gave it to him that week. And then after that, though, that was the only week that I really did that to him. And then after that, they became like insanely good, and we were losing to them after that. So, but that was still one of my fondest memories.
Sure.
Playing against like a rookie. And then, I don't even know who else, man. I think playing with Aurora for the first time was really cool because he has a really unique personality.
Yeah.
Yep. And me and him would get into it all the time. He'd call me crabby. I'd shit on him. Like just stuff like that.
The way
that's really
the way I describe Aurora's personality is he's like the nicest, most stubborn person you've ever met.
Yeah, he'd be like, nah, I think it's like this. I'm like, no, like blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Sure.
Who's similar like that is Homofe. You wouldn't even believe it, but Homofe was like that a lot. He's obviously like soft spoken and everything like that, and I would just yell, be like, homie, no, it's like this, blah blah blah. I would go 5 minutes of yelling. I'm like, okay, he finally agrees, and he'd be like, yeah, but I, his like, and he'd still be like, yeah, but no, I don't agree. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't agree? I just told you what it is, and God, those are fun times for sure.
Well, you've been fortunate enough to have, like, I would say one of the longest careers here. Are there some players that you played with or against early on that you might have thought, oh man, these guys are going to be here for the long haul, year after year after year, and that didn't happen, that didn't pan out?
Yeah, I definitely thought Lobster is a great example of that. I thought Lobster was insane. Actually, when I was first making a team way back in the day, I hit him up and I was like, hey, you want to drink? Because his Heba was like bananas back in the day. And he was like, brother, I'm EU. And I'm like, oh, crap, you're EU. You know what I mean? Like, okay, fine. But anyway, that was just the beginning of it. And then they won the launch tournament and everything. So I always thought Lobster was going to be in it for the long haul. And then I don't really know much about the EU scene or the politics behind it. So, but he ended up leaving the scene for whatever reason. Yeah. And I always thought Reels 2, Reels ZX would be on it for a long time. As far as NA, I don't know. I think all the guys from the AFK squad, like Incon and Weekend and Cyclone, who's obviously still on the team, and those guys were like, I thought they would probably be in the league for the long time, but they kind of just like went into the whole content creation thing. And like, those of you that don't know, it's like streaming every day at the same time every day, and then having to scrim and then having to play and then all this stuff. It takes so much out of you. It's like you either take it from scrims or you take it from your stream, right? But streaming is obviously better in the long term, more job security than the SPL is, and it's something that is more lucrative than what the SPL is. So naturally, their focus goes to those things.
Sure.
So I always thought those guys were really good, and I don't know, other than that, I think that is probably it.
Yeah. You mentioned maybe like getting older and retirement a little bit, and I have to mention there are quite a few players now that are sort of reaching maybe what we would consider retirement age for esports. Like you, Bera, Raffer are the first three that definitely come to mind. Is that something that you're considering, or like how are those thoughts going? And are you like, if SPL is going to go on for another 3 years, are you ready to go on for three more years, or how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the thing about Smite is it requires less like, I don't know how to say this, like for example, Counter-Strike, you have to be so accurate and precise on your shots, you know what I mean? And you have to flick it. But Smite, there's a nice margin of error where like if you flick, you kind of have to get like this close. And in the Counter-Strike, you got to get like this close, you know what I mean? So I think Smite is very age-friendly in that sense. Most of what Smite is honestly prediction more than reaction, right? Like you ward and you're like, okay, I don't see the jungler. I'm starting to think that he's here, so I put my hand on my beads key, ready to go. You know what I mean? Like that's more what Smite is compared to, I would say, other games are. So I think it's very age friendly. In terms of like thinking about retirement stuff, I'm definitely at the age where I'm thinking about my future. Am I going to have kids? Because I'm already married. Where am I going to live? Like, should I buy a place in Georgia because of SPL, or maybe, I go back to New York and then I just fly down for it. Those are definitely the decisions that weigh on me. I have a lot more responsibilities in like personal life responsibilities. To be honest, like playing professionally is not like a long-term career goal. It's not a long-term job security path. It's not a long-term anything. It's a short-term thing.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where streaming comes in, right? Streaming is a more of a long-term thing. But even then, streaming is not a good security blanket for your future.
Sure,
you know what I mean? There's no benefits. We're all third-party workers. You know what I mean? It's not like there's benefits provided to you or anything like that, health insurance, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of like real-life stuff that goes on behind the scene that I think a lot of people don't know. And definitely is something I would say the older guys in the league consider.
Yeah.
And again, even streaming is not like security. One month you might have X subs or that subs or ad revenue, this and that, right? It's not like a consistent thing.
Sure.
And what happens if Smite high-res closes down tomorrow?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So like that's kind of like the thing that weighs on you. And it is very stressful in that sense. And just another thing that kind of adds weight to your back.
Right.
So yeah, there's definitely like thoughts going on of like future and things like that. But obviously I'm not going to get into too like detailed or anything like that. Yeah. But it's definitely, I would say, I promise you, it's something that the older players definitely think about on a consistent basis.
Sure. Have you maybe talked to any of them about it, about this sort of thing at all?
No, I think everyone's kind of, they've developed their own plan, right? Like what they're going to do afterwards and things like that. I don't really think like, Rafa is going to go back, or like, he lives in the UK, right? His lady's there, his house is there, you know what I mean? And Bear already lived in Georgia. He has his own house. He has his own life, you know what I mean? So we don't really like talk about that in that sense. I mean, we do talk to each other. I'm good friends with both of them, but not really about that kind of stuff.
Okay. I think I have maybe just one more question here. And then we'll give you a little shout out time, maybe to talk about beef and things like that, But I asked Bera about this because we've had a couple discussions in the extended cuts of our show with analysts about the way that team construction works in Smite, especially compared to maybe other esports, and also compared to like traditional sports. And we were talking a little bit about players individually maybe not having as much agency, whereas like once you have a team together, the team basically drives the value of the players. And I just wanted to maybe get your thoughts on that. Like, do you feel like certain players maybe lose out on value that they could either provide an org and get compensated for, obviously, and that value is diminished by being packaged as part of a team? And tell me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand it is the teams basically sell themselves to an org. And, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that for many cases, the contracts are basically very similar from player to player within a team. Is that, something that maybe bothers you, or is it just maybe like the size of Smite has sort of made it so that you need to have the team to have the value for the org?
Yeah. So, where to begin? So yeah, so how Smite used to be was the teams had all the power. The captain had all the power back in the day, right? There's a lot of infamous stories about captains doing stuff and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So so back in the day, the captains had the power, right? And the orgs would kind of just fall in. They'd be like, oh, the captains had the spot, so the orgs would just come in, and like the players had the power, the leverage over the organization. Right. But also the orgs weren't really getting anything from the players either. Like the way things work now, high-res hooks up the orgs, you know what I mean? To stay in and pay salaries and things like that. Whereas back in the day, it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? So there wasn't really any incentive for an org to be in Smite.
Right.
So back in the day, there was TSM and C9, right, for like a half a year, and then they left because there was no incentive for them to be in Smite. Why are they going to be in Smite when they already have League? Or why are they going to be in Smite when they already have Counter-Strike? Right? Smite is a tier 2 esport. So, and I think over the years, you could see that there was a lot less big orgs in there, and everyone was like, oh, why is there no orgs in Smite? No big orgs in Smite. It's because there was no incentive for them to be in. There was no anything for them to be in there, right? And then I think Hi-Res saw that as an issue, and one of the things they did to save the scene was they provided an incentive for orgs to be in the SPL. They gave them the power, they gave them the money to pay players and and attract players instead of the other way around. So then they kind of changed the whole infrastructure of how teams were made and how teams were recruited. So now I think it was like season 5 or something. The orgs had all the power, and so teams had to sell themselves to the orgs, like you were saying, right? So what would happen is players, or like the popular players, would form a team, right? And then that's when politics came into it, where like, okay, I want to pick up that guy and that guy, even if he's not as good as that guy, because I want to play with them, right? And then they form a team, and then they sell themselves to the org, like, hey, we'll do this for X amount of dollars, and then of course the orgs have all the power in the world, so they'd be like, oh, but this team wants to do it for less, you know what I mean? So there's a whole bunch of like that kind of behind the scenes nonsense that went into it, and so that's how I would say teams are formed. That's where I went. Was talking about how like there's not a lot of security in the SPL. You know what I mean? It's very so much more political, and I think also like these orgs, they don't really. I don't know if I want to say this in general, but I would say maybe a lot of them, they don't follow the game in a sense. They don't know, like, they're not looking for the upcoming star. You know what I mean? They rely on the players to do that in a sense, or the coach, right, to find up like an upcoming star. So I think that's what's different between, like, let's say League of Legends or like a tier 1 esport compared to what Smite is, right? They have that extra added infrastructure within the organization to recruit players or make changes. That's why you don't see a lot of changes going on. You don't see a lot of anything going on. You know what I mean? In terms of like how the team functions. So that's definitely one thing I think could use some improvement on. But again, what is the really incentive to do that? Sure. For organizations to invest that heavily into that kind of like added infrastructure, right? If you take a look at it, like Smite as a whole, in terms of, let's say, viewership or sponsorship opportunities, it's not as high as any of the tier 1 esports, and there's quite a few tier 1 esports nowadays.
Sure.
So I think to even maybe expect more than what we're getting is kind of a far-fetched thing, in my opinion. And I always see people talk a lot of smack about like Smite esports or like hires, but I think the players need like kind of a reality check in that sense, where it's like, you are so lucky that Hi-Rez has invested all this money, which I would say for very minimal return, if any return at all, in their esports scene, for you to get a salary that's that high, right? Maybe it's not high in terms of the general world, but it's high for a tier 2 esport, right?
And you get your housing subsidized, basically.
And yeah, exactly. You get it, all that kind of stuff, and you get to kind of live like a dream that every kid had back in the day that's playing esports now, right? And we are so lucky that Hi-Rez has fronted the bill, you know what I mean? To like do all these things, have that kind of infrastructure, give us that kind of feel of being important and playing at LAN instead of online at our house, because they literally pay for everything. You know what I mean? So I think that's something that every player should not take for granted and be appreciative of, because I don't really know of any other tier 2 esport that like, if you look at Smite's numbers in general, like that would dish up all that kind of cash to like take care of their players and take care of the esports scene. So that's something I'm definitely grateful for. And I think people need to realize what Hi-Rez has done for the scene, especially a few years ago when Smite was kind of like not popular at all. I think we were averaging like 8K players, maybe something like that. And they were still fronting the bill, still having, $1 million prize pool at Worlds and things like that. So that's something that I want everyone that's watching this is to appreciate that. Yeah, I know Hi-Rez has a lot of issues or like has their faults, but this is something that they really went out of their way for to like provide this kind of, I would say, dream for like esports players that are playing Smite to experience.
That's good. I like that answer a lot. Because Barra actually gave a really wishy-washy answer when I asked him about that. He was like, I don't want to say anything about this. I don't want to get in trouble.
I mean, this is all like, not common knowledge, but it's knowledge that's out there that's maybe not, it's things that have been said on and off, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I think I'm basically all out of questions here, Zap. So this is the time of the interview where I'm asking who you got beef with, who you try to call out, Let's
I got beef with everyone. Okay? With every other ADC out there, okay?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just Smite's interesting. It's like you can have beef, but also you get called out for having beef too. You know what I mean? Like if you talk shit about someone, there's there's like a vocal minority that's like, yay, you know, like beef and all that kind of stuff. And it seems like it's cool. And like you have that vocal minority that's like, oh yeah, I love this. But there's actually the silent majority that don't like it, that think it's rude nowadays. I'm not even kidding. So that's why I think there's a lot of players, especially people that stream, that don't say these things out loud, because there is that kind of like, you notice it when you say it. You notice, you start getting that feedback, you start getting those DMs, you start getting like that kind of hate. And no one really wants to deal with that, right? It's very political, especially in the streaming world, especially in 2020. You know what I mean? So it's like very political nowadays. And I think everyone has slight beef with everyone, to be honest. Well, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to get shit on by like the Obey ADC, you know what I mean? Like there's beef with, there's always there's that competitive nature that everyone has, that of course, like no one wants to lose to the other guy, and they probably like think the other guy sucks or like anything like that. But it's kind of just the times we live in, and the people that are in the spotlight, that it's not easy to talk smack about each other.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's the problem. I know that most of the players in the league are generally nice to each other and friendly with each other. So like, you know, when there's like beef, it's usually like a friendly beef, right? But you know, maybe there are other fans that, you know, I don't know, when you go to Worlds, all the players hang out and, you know, everyone's having a good time. So, you know, I don't think there's like bad blood or anything with beef in this league. Yeah,
no, there's no bad blood. I mean, I've seen the same players for my whole 20s. You know what I mean? Like I've seen the players, I've known all these guys for so long. It's hard to like hate any of them. I don't, like, you know what I mean? Like, or like have a real beef with them. Like, can you fabricate it? Sure. But again, like I said, it doesn't actually get received well in the Smite community. It really doesn't. So that's why you don't really see a lot of it. And you'll see the vocal minority be like, no, we love that stuff, it makes it interesting. But I promise you, that is the minority in the community.
All right. Well, maybe no beef, but if you want to give any shout outs to anyone.
No, I do have beef with everyone, like I said. But like I said, what I mentioned before, you know, there is beef, but it's silent beef.
Sure. All right, then. Well, here's the time for you, Zap. The floor is yours. Give your shout-outs to whoever you want. And I just want to give you a huge thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you coming, and it's been a great conversation. The floor is yours.
For sure. Shout-outs to my team for dealing with my my divaness sometimes that I have. Shout-out to all the people watching and all the viewers that, you know, Smite actually gets a lot of love on Twitch and a lot of love on YouTube and other like social media platforms. So big shout out to you guys. Pretty much kind of keep the game alive. It's a game that's been going on for 9 years now. So honestly, I think it's very impressive for Smite to maintain what it's maintained. It's actually been growing a lot. It's like tripled its player base over the last year, and the numbers look good in terms of Twitch, YouTube, and things like that. And it helps content creators like me and everyone else out there make a living. So thank you guys so much for that. And last but not least, big shout out to you, Pam, we need more people like you to do things like this content that's third party, that's not, you know, funded by Hi-Rez or anything like that. It's like you taking the time out, your love for the game and your love for the scene to do these kind of things, which I think is awesome. And that's pretty much it, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. I appreciate it a lot. Thanks for coming on. It was a great talk.
No problem.